Hi, my name is Arjun and welcome to ENERGIZE, the tech revolution. Today we are excited to feature John Wadsworth, co-founder and COO of Stay and Charge, an EMSP driving EV charging solutions for hotels and semi-private environments. With a career rooted in tackling complex business challenges and building scalable distribution networks, John brings a sharp eye for uncovering opportunities and transforming them into industry-shaping solutions. Welcome to the show, John.
Thanks, Arjun. Glad to be here.
For sure. So, John, let's dive into your professional journey. I mean, you started off your journey in the financial services sector where you held various leadership positions before moving into the EV charging industry. What was the motivation and inspiration behind the transition?
Yeah, I think part of it speaks a little bit to how I ended up in financial services at the outset of my career, and the root of that was really kind of around an interest in working with and in support of business owners. I grew up around wealth management. My dad was an advisor, and really it was kind of cool seeing him, be able to support the development and growth of a lot of entrepreneurs. And I've always kind of been attracted to that space. So, did take a bit of a conventional pathway through, more of like a sales and then business management role within financial services, but kind of had ultimately a bit of an itch for going out and building a business, and had been looking at and paying attention to the electrification story for quite a while. And what I saw there was sort of a generational opportunity in my mind to shape the energy landscape, kind of at a global scale. I mean, there's a whole lot happening in this space. It's a critically important thing to get right. And yeah, so started just kind of looking around for opportunities in that space. And credit where due, my wife is an incredible woman supporting me in this adventure to kind of hop out of a corporate role and go on a hunt for something that again kind of checked those entrepreneurial boxes, and landed me in ultimately what ended up being a new industry, and a new industry for me, but semi-familiar role in terms of kind of what the day-to-day looks like.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's great to hear, John. So, for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, would love to learn a little bit more about the EV and EV charging landscape globally. Would love to learn who are the countries which are like the adopters of EVs around the globe. Also, which are the states in US that are the adopters. Also, would love to hear which are the companies that are the leading manufacturers of EV and some of the government incentives that are being currently provided.
Sure. A lot to unpack there. Kind of tackle it in order there, or make an effort to. So, just kind of looking globally at where we see a lot of EV adoption, Norway is sort of the poster child. I think they're around 95% or more of new vehicles sold in Norway are electric. The EU, China, and the US in terms of regions make up, I want to say it's in the neighborhood of 95% of of the EVs that are bought off of new production. China's at about 60% of that total global volume, so they're absolutely without question, in a dominant and leading position in that regard. Um, when we look at the U.S., you know, sort of a big smiley face kind of around the West Coast down through the South, and then sort of back up the Eastern Seaboard is where you find some of the highest concentrations, just specific states, California, Florida, Texas, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, and then there's some pockets kind of up in the Northeast as well. But yeah, I mean, adoption's kind of rolling on, fairly steadily in the domestic market. I'm sure we could dive into all kinds of different details around those data sets, but yeah, broadly speaking, it's not limited to a single locale, but there are pockets that are a little bit out ahead versus others.
Thank you.
Um,
Go ahead.
so yeah, let's see. So that was global and US. You had a question in there too about Was it automakers?
Yes, that's correct. Who are the leading manufacturers of EVs?
Yeah, I mean Tesla and BYD on a global basis are, your pretty clear leaders today. That said, all of the OEMs, the majors, domestically and in Europe, they're all kind of trying to figure it out and work through their strategy and planning. And it's not a small thing for an automaker to retool their production and manufacturing. So yeah, there's a lot of investment out there. There's a lot of big, difficult decisions to be made. There's a lot going on in the policy environment right now that's, challenging some of those plans. And we'll see how it shakes out. But it's an equation that all of the auto manufacturers are going to have to solve.
For sure. Thank you so much, John, for sharing that. Now, would love to learn more about your organization, Stay and Charge, and the products that you're offering.
Yeah, so Stay in Charge, we do a pretty broad range of things within the EV space. Our focus has been within the hospitality sector. So when we launched the company, what we saw there was, we're not unique in this insight, right? Hotels are a natural fit for level 2 charging. They check the box for drivers looking to solve for range anxiety. By definition, if you're at a hotel, you're not at your house, which is where most people do most of their charging. And so there's a peace of mind element to having that infrastructure where you're staying when you're on the road. Beyond that, they've got a strong economic incentive, to put chargers in before a lot of other classes of real estate. Because unlike, a strip mall, for example, where the benefits are somewhat ambiguous, who's going to benefit from putting that infrastructure in the parking lot? When you have a hotel, they own the business that's generating revenue on that site. They also own the parking lot. So we targeted hotels. They've got a high demand for a strong service model as well, something that was lacking in the marketplace. So what we bring in that environment is really a better experience for the owners in terms of how they go out and do their planning and procurement around EV charging. And then for the drivers, once they're there, we're committed to a strong high degree of guest support. We're available 24/7, 365. We'll help your crazy aunt who accidentally rented an EV figure out how to use the app for the first time, for example. So it's just some of it's little things, some of it's the harder, uglier components of operating an asset that a lot of other folks in this space don't want to do or haven't invested enough resources in, that have given us a bit of an early edge. So on the equipment side, most of what we've done to date is level 2. We do work in the DC fast charge space as well. We've got a few projects in various stages of development on that side. So yeah, I mean, we're really kind of a full service EV charging solutions provider, and we tend to think of it from at least historically a bit of a managed services perspective.
That's great to hear. Thank you so much for sharing, John. Now, could you expand more on the typical lifespan of an EV charging station and what type of maintenance goes into it over its lifespan?
Yeah. So there's really two major considerations there. One is what type of asset are you using, and two is where is it being used. So if it's a level 2 charger, and just for the benefit of your audience, I know a lot of them are certainly going to be quite familiar with this space, others maybe less so, but level 2 refers to a unit that can typically be installed on an existing residential or commercial buildings electrical service. So think about it like a big electric dryer in terms of what's required to plug that thing into the power supply. These units are pretty simple. They're not very complicated. They've got effectively some safety switches, some communications, and toll gating componentry in there, a modem, maybe a screen, and some LED lights. So in terms of like actual maintenance, there's not a lot inside of the shell or inside of the box it really can fail, or if it does, typically it'll happen pretty quick. So a common point of failure might be a loose connection between a board and a card reader, or a modem that just, you know, didn't work right out of the box, or worked well enough through the testing phase, but doesn't get a signal in the lot, or has some other point of failure. So usually we figure those out pretty quick. And then, as long as that charger is, not being abused in its environment, the expected lifespan somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 10 years. Um, sure, you may have a cord to replace here and there if it's left about and run over and those kinds of things, but the charger itself should be pretty reliable over that period. We know some of them are going to break. That's true of anything, but on the level 2 side, pretty straightforward. Maintenance is really about keeping the cords active, and if there is something in there, either replacing the unit or doing some basic work to bring it back online. When you get into a DC fast charger, it's a much different environment. It's a high voltage piece of equipment. You're bringing in new service entrances from the utility. And unlike a level 2 charger that's simply providing alternating current to the vehicle, and then the vehicle itself is managing the delivery of that power into the battery, a DC fast charger directly charges the battery. So the level of communication between the charger and the vehicle needs to be a bit tidier. You're dealing with higher currents, you're dealing with more heat, just everything about it is a little bit elevated. So you've got things like onboard cooling systems. That could be a cooler for the rectifiers that change the type of current. That could be, there's liquid cooled cables for high powered charging applications as well. So as you continue to add complexity, Arjun, you understand that the maintenance intervals need to shorten. The types of problems you're likely to encounter are going to increase. And then there's just a simple measure of wear and tear too. A DC fast charger is designed, to be cycled throughout the course of the day. A typical charging session might last 10 to 20 minutes. Certainly sometimes more than that, but you can put 10, 20, 30, 50 people through a DC fast charger in the right place in a day, whereas a level 2 charger just simply isn't going to see that level of utilization. Even if it's plugged in and charging all day, every day, it's not getting plugged in, plugged out, dropped, and so forth. So, in terms of maintenance, it's just about having a plan and having a realistic set of expectations around what it takes to keep that asset operating and, fully functional.
Thank you so much for sharing that, John. Now, could you share some specific success stories of your customers using your product?
Sure. So I'll give you an example. We've got a casino up in sort of a rural location in northern Nevada. They're about maybe 3.5, 4 hours from either Vegas or Salt Lake City, and along their routes, there's just not that much charging or charging infrastructure. We put a charger in, we put a pair of chargers in their lot a couple years ago. They get pretty regular usage. Their success, I think, is rooted in the fact that they have, one of the few casinos in that area that has charging. They've got good repeat customers. They pick up just travelers who happen to be passing through and find themselves in need of a charge. And, A, they're there, and B, they're positioned to service that customer while they're there. It's a level 2 charger. If you get there and you're in dire straits, you might be there overnight unplanned, or for, a good chunk of your day unplanned. But they've got food, they've got table games, they've got slots, they've got all kinds of stuff. So, just a good application. We do a lot of work. They're one of our heavier sites for guest calls too. That example of the aunt who got the EV from the rental car company is common there. Or, also we see, just a lot of folks who maybe it's their first trip or their first time, kind of out, you know, doing public charging outside away from the house. So anyway, it's been a good product for them. They're generating good revenue off of the stations. And, while I don't have insight to their books around the hotel rooms that they've sold directly as a result of that, or the extra traffic they've picked up in the casino, I'm pretty confident they're doing well with them. So,
Thank
uh,
you. Thank you so much for sharing that, John. Now, in terms of, the future trends in the EV and EV charging space, would love to learn, some insight on that. Where do you think the future is going? And also, what advice would you have for a company that's looking to enter into this EV charging space?
All right, I'll take that two at a time, or one at a time, I guess. So looking ahead, particularly in my market, most of where my focus has been, or Stay in Charge's focus has been, is around these semi-private environments. So if you're looking at what do I need in a fully private environment, like a resident, like a single family residence. You just need something simple that can charge the car. It's in your garage. Nobody else is coming or going. There's not a whole lot to it. You're not solving for much other than delivering power. On the other end of the spectrum, you have fully public charging, where any member of the public could be expected to show up and want to use that resource at any point in any day. And there needs to be some way to grant them access and collect a fee, or just monitor that asset, make sure it's working, make sure that whoever put it in is getting paid for its use. So that's kind of a fully featured online connected kind of environment. And then somewhere in the middle, you've got these semi-private locations. And that would be, Arjun, like a hotel where you've got guests who are coming and going, but you know who they are, you know when they're supposed to be there, you know who should or shouldn't be able to get in and out of the building. An apartment type complex, same kind of thing. You've got a defined list of tenants who should have access. Maybe you need a little bit of additional functionality to allow like a tenant's guests to use a charger. So there might be a little bit of nuance to that, but the core function is the people who live here should charge or should get access to that charger. And then the general public, maybe far, far, far less important in planning for that resource. So what we've kind of looked at is, how do you sort of bridge this gap between a fully public station has a large degree of requirement that needs to be supported, and has a cost that is reflective of that fully featured type of operating environment, versus something that maybe already has existing building management systems, access controls, software that could feasibly be expected to one day operate the charger. So what we've done at Stay in Charge is bridge that gap between semi-private environments that already have management systems in place and control of the charger itself. And what that does is kind of cuts out that traditional charging network, that extra layer of network licenses and costs that rides along with that, and it moves that asset into and underneath the control of existing software platforms. So as we look ahead, what we see is an environment where level 2 is quite ubiquitous. A lot of it might be given away for free, and considered a marketing expense. So another application of that might be, pick your favorite chain sit-down restaurant, and they've probably all got an app and a member rewards program. They're all looking to market and bring people to the table. If they could give away power at a low enough rate for free that it, maybe it costs them 50 cents or, $2 per table to give away power. Now they've got a new table who's excited that, they're getting free charging while they're there. It's just an ancillary little benefit. So uh, there's a whole lot of different ways that creative businesses will look to utilize charging, but making it far more affordable for them to offer that resource and gatekeep the asset is where we think we're going to see a whole lot of interest and activity over the coming years.
Thank you for sharing that, John. And what advice would you have for anybody who's looking in to enter the space?
Yeah, if you're looking to get into the space, I would just, above all else, encourage you to do your research and figure out where you sit and what piece of the value chain you're going to solve for. Know who your customers are and what they're looking for and how you're going to go to market. Test those theories. Go out, talk to people. Just make sure that before you go spending a whole ton of money marketing this stuff or diving in blindly, that you kind of know what you're getting into. It's a challenging market. It's a little bit crowded. There's a handful of incumbents that have, their own degrees of baggage. But then on the other hand, there's just so much growth opportunity in this space at large that it's hard not to look at it and try and think about where if you're positioned to participate in it, how to do so and how to do so effectively.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, John. Now, shifting our conversation towards a career standpoint of view, for somebody who's looking to establish a career in the EV and the EV charging space, what sort of functional roles, popular functional roles exist in that space, and any type of skill sets you recommend they build upon?
Yeah, this one's interesting, and I've spent a little bit of time thinking about it from a few different perspectives over the last few months. Traditionally, you're looking at a lot of engineering type roles. If you're, and it's very specific to like which piece of, again, which piece of that value chain are you looking to participate in? Are you an engineer, an electrical engineer who's qualified to develop products and support them, from an engineering perspective? Are you a software developer or a data person who's capable of, digesting a ginormous set of data related to fleet and logistics planning and want to be able to go out and apply that skill set to a particular customer base? There's electricians who install these things. There's salespeople who go out and do business development, trying to gin up, locations who are interested in hosting EV charging. So there's a wide range of different ways that I would say you could enter the market. But it's a matter, I think, of figuring out where your specific skill set and interest, aligns with charging, or how you can use charging as an advantage in another role that charging might be just a small piece of. And an example of that, Arjun, might be if you're in facilities management. Pretty much anybody in facilities management is capable of turning a wrench, diagnosing, a problem at a building, a lot of kind of general maintenance related activities, and some basic training around level 2 chargers, how to replace one, how to diagnose one, just some really, really basic stuff even that, hey, I'm going to be around EV charging if I'm in these types of roles. Um, why not learn a little bit about it and kind of take that uh, take that function and bring it into what I do on a day-to-day basis, right? Give my employer or my company a reason not to hire a third party to come out and take a look at a charger, for example. So some of it will be just like small distributed, discrete little bits of learning that, are applied broadly, and others will be, deeply involved in the space, either, developing, Web3 and IoT applications to interconnect various charging networks and building systems, for example, or, engineering, charging curves and battery chemistries inside of an automaker or battery manufacturer. So that it's a really huge space, but a lot of the roles I think are, tend to be in engineering, tend to be in sales, or tend to be a little bit more directly affiliated with some of the trades involved in supporting infrastructure delivery.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that, John. Now, lastly, are there any industry conferences and trade shows specifically for EV and the EV charging space that you would recommend our viewers to attend?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a ton of them, and again, I think it kind of depends if you're going to go out and attend some shows. What do you want to get out of it? So again, I'd bring it back to that notion of goal setting and long-term objectives. If your goal is to get a job with a charger manufacturer or uh, you know a charge point operator or EMSP or something like that, you may find a conference like RE Plus or something like that to be of value. You'll meet a lot of people and a lot of the participants directly in like the product space, the hardware space, which you may not find a whole lot of in an environment like that are the customers that you ultimately want to sell to. So just for example, with Stay in Charge, we do a lot of our marketing through trade shows. That's where we've met a lot of our customers, but we're out at hospitality industry trade shows. We're not at EV charging trade shows. And we're there because that's where our customers are. That's where the people that we need to meet to, learn more about the specific problems facing our clientele and develop the relationships with various supporting partners and industry players to bring our product and service to market. So I would encourage you. There's conferences. There's something going on probably every week, if not certainly every month somewhere, whether in person or online or otherwise. If you're an electrician, approach it from that perspective. If you're trying to sell into a particular niche, that could be apartments, it could be hotels, it could be anything along those lines. But those conferences are out there for those industry players, and they're a great opportunity to go out, meet people, and have dialogue and discussion around either what it is you're trying to figure out how to do, or look for somebody who needs your expertise inside of their organization. So, if you're in hotels and uh, sustainability, for example, maybe there's an opportunity to go out and find a role inside of a hotel group, for example, managing some of that stuff. But anyway, yeah, it's a hard question to answer at a certain level, Arjun, because I think there's just so many different places that people could end up participating and different skill sets that get involved at various points in the market.
For sure. Thank you so much, John. So that concludes the formal portion of our interview for today. We like to end our podcast with a fun segment called a rapid fire, where our viewers and listeners get to learn a little bit more about the personal side of our guests. So as
Sure,
part of this rapid fire, I'll be asking you three quick questions. So are you ready?
sure. Let's see.
Great. So firstly, John, as this is a tech podcast, would love to learn what's your favorite app or a hardware product that you enjoy using?
App or hardware product. I'll go with Strava and Garmin. Um, you can find me pretty frequently on a mountain bike in the woods, and those are the tech products that I interact with most on that side. Love-hate relationship with either one of them, but at the end of the day, they do what I need them to do, and they're pretty good at their job. So stick with that.
Great, John. Thank you. So secondly, what's been a book that you have read that has had a big impact on your life and why?
Yeah, I will. Let's see. I'll go with there's a book called Abundance written by Pete Diamandis. It's a bit dated at this point. I want to say maybe like 2012 or thereabouts. but its whole sort of theme and thrust was, the world's a better place than you might think it is, and there's just a whole lot of opportunity to solve through, grit and human ingenuity and drive, any and all of the problems that, we might be facing at a human scale. Um, so, not everything in there stood the test of time. Revisited it recently and saw some allusions to what was Liz Holmes' company, the lab on a chip kind of thing, some of those types of ideas that were out there at the time and didn't quite pan out the way that the technologists and futurists may have thought. But nonetheless, from a perspective and outlooks perspective, I've thought about kind of the attitude that Pete preaches in that book and in a lot of his other writing as well. On and off for a long time.
Lastly, do you have any final words of wisdom, perhaps a quote or a short story that you'd like to share with members of our audience?
Uh, quote. We've been kicking this one around internally a fair bit over the last 6 months, and I think this one goes to Wayne Gretzky's dad. So it's, skate to where the puck is headed, not where it is or where it's been. And that's a perspective I think we've applied pretty directly at Stay in Charge when we've been looking for how do we bridge these gaps between what's available in the market today and how are these problems addressed and solved? We saw pretty clearly that there was a gap between today and the future. And we wanted to be the ones to solve it. We worked hard to get ourselves in a position to understand the problem well enough to bring a viable solution to market. And we're super excited about the opportunity set ahead of us. So that's kind of been a rallying cry around the office for the last 6 months or so.
Thank you so much, John. So that concludes our interview for today. How can our viewers and listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, or you can find us at stayincharge.com, STAYN charge.com. Yeah, feel free to reach out. LinkedIn's probably the best way to get directly a hold of me. And if I ignore you for a couple days, it's not you, it's me. I'm an intermittent social media user. So yeah, reach out. Love to chat.
Thank you. Thank you so much, John. So thank you so much for being on our show today. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure having you on the show, John. And thank you so much for sharing your subject matter expertise on EV and EV charging. From the team at Energize, wishing you and the entire team of Stay and Charge lots of growth and lots of success.
Thanks, Arjun. Likewise to you and your viewers.
Thank you so
For having
much.
me.
Thank you so much, John. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, our episode for today. And remember, you're one product away from transformation. I'm Arjun Chaudhary.